Shannon Watkins, and I am here today with Professor Buck Goldstein. He is the University Entrepreneur in Residence and a professor of the practice in the Department of Economics at UNC-Chapel Hill. He authors a regular newsletter entitled Our Higher Calling, and he co-authored the book, Our Higher Calling, Rebuilding the Partnership Between America and Its Colleges and Universities. Professor Goldstein is with me today to discuss how and why universities should reopen post-COVID-19. Buck, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me today. I really appreciate your time.
Happy to be here.
Great. So to start off, in one of your recent newsletters, you note how colleges are on a firm deadline to figure out whether and how to reopen this fall. You say that research universities are in a unique position and have a special responsibility, in fact, to lead the way for other institutions on how to go forward in the wake of the pandemic. Why is that?
Well, we have a unique community. I would say it's a somewhat closed community, and we have the ability to punch a bunch of different buttons in an attempt to learn more about how people can live in community within the context of the virus. And here at Chapel Hill, we also have an extraordinary group of scientists who are epidemiologists, specialists in variety, and really all of the issues connected with the virus and with COVID. And so I think we all believe that we ought to try. But I think it's also important to say that we still don't know what we don't know. Mm-hmm. And that trying doesn't mean that it's going to work. So our hope is that we can use fact-based information and not worry so much about extraneous issues and just try to make decisions based on what we know and what we don't know, and hope that we can make it through the semester.
Great, thank you. So you list several recommendations that universities should consider implementing as they reopen, such as providing disclosures to students and allowing them to opt out of the fall semester if they're concerned about health risks. Do you know of any plans of allowing students to opt just to be online, solely online for the fall?
I think there are 1,000 students, there's room for 1,000 students at UNC under a special program if they have special needs to do this semester entirely online. And I know that other schools are doing the same thing. There's no way that you can ask students with who are particularly vulnerable to come back. And the other issue is foreign students who can't get here. Mm-hmm. Those are provisions and the UNC plan for those students, and I believe many other schools are doing a similar thing.
Just to clarify, there are provisions in the UNC plan for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
1,000 students, for 1,000 students.
For 1,000 students. Okay. Thank you. And what kind of disclosures should universities make to students?
You know, it's a tough call because on the one hand, you want to be optimistic and you don't want to be prophets of doom. On the other hand, you want to be transparent. So that balance is a tough one. But in general, I think honesty is the best policy here. And to say that we have it all figured out and it's going to be smooth sailing is doing everybody a disservice. I think what you have to do is to say that we've talked to the best minds available and we believe we have a plan that's viable, but we don't know what we don't know, and that curveballs can come our way, and there's certainly no promises. that this it's certainly going to be a semester unlike any other,
Mhm.
and people are going to have to reach their own conclusions about um, whether this is they want to defer or they want to or what they want to do. But um, I think anyone who's lived through the last few months has to understand that we can't predict August, let alone September, October, and we're going to be done, as you know, by
Mhm.
essentially Halloween, and then exams, and that people will be the semester will be over with exams before Thanksgiving.
Mhm. Good. No, thank you. On a similar
Yeah.
topic, so everyone agrees that special accommodations should be made for people who are particularly at risk.
Hmm.
So, what can universities do to safeguard the health of faculty, students, and staff when classes recommence?
Wow. So that's an ongoing conversation probably at every university right now.
Hmm.
Um, and, um, you know, I'll give you an example. I teach a course with the chancellor, and we have 25 students. And today we were talking about what room, what's an appropriate, this is a seminar. What's an appropriate room and setting for a seminar of 25 students uh, in if they're going to be meeting in person? Do they need to be 6 feet apart? They certainly need to be wearing masks, or could they be 3 feet apart? And if they're 6 feet apart, then how big does that room really have to be? And um, should the seminar be meeting in person all the time or part of the time online through Zoom? So um, probably every institution is going to come up with a slightly different model. The reality is I don't think that anyone can guarantee anything right now. I mean, you can attempt to reduce risk. Um, and then faculty have to reach their own conclusions. I think for the most part, faculty who need to teach online because of any underlying condition or age or whatever else will be allowed to. I think other faculty would be encouraged to at least try to meet classes in person. I suspect it'll be a case-by-case basis with their deans or their chairs. But I've heard conversations like, can a faculty require a student in their class to wear a mask?
Hmm.
That's an issue right now. And if you're a faculty person, you probably want that answer to be yes.
Right. No, it's definitely a lot to think about. Uh, so, what do you think about Chapel Hill's plan so far? Do you think UNC is on the right track?
um, I think that UNC is making its best efforts, as are many, many other um, campuses. What I think is going on, which is encouraging, is a lot of transparency. Where there's a faculty survey. There are a lot of solicitation of input, but the flip side is that we're in a crisis. I mean, we have a pandemic, we have a recession bordering on maybe worse, and now we have a racial reckoning. It's more like a tsunami than a perfect storm. And so, how do you, um, in a situation like that, you can't manage strictly by consensus, i.e., you can't make everybody happy.
Mm.
So you can over communicate and you can let people know what's going on, but you can't have like long um, committee meetings and huge amounts of process when many decisions have to be made on the fly with imperfect information on almost a day-by-day basis. And, universities aren't really set up for that. The whole concept of the university is much more collegial, consensus building. We've been around a long time, hundreds of years, but we're in a crisis situation now. And so I think we have to empower our leaders to make decisions in ways that wouldn't typically be done, and they're going to get criticism. I mean, I think this is the case where no good turn will go unpunished, no matter how hard you work. There are people who are going to be mad, and there are people who disagree, and there are people who said, well, students weren't consulted enough, faculty weren't consulted enough. But the reality is you can't do that when you're making minute-to-minute decisions in the midst of a tsunami.
Mm. No, fair enough. You also argue that universities should approach reopening with the same amount of rigor that they bring to any other research project.
Mhm.
How should universities go about this research and ensure transparency in their findings?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're on new ground there too. I suggested that you actually have a PI, a principal investigator, and that you really dedicate some research resource to learning on an ongoing basis, not only to make this semester more successful, but for the rest of society to sort of say this works and this doesn't work. So I think the key is to be intentional from the beginning and say, look, not only is this a enterprise to open the university, it's an enterprise to learn as we open the university more about how people can live in community in the midst of a pandemic. And so it's about making sure that we're being intentional about learning at the same time that we are um, trying to execute this in a way that keeps everybody safe.
Thank you. Thank you for your insight on these really important questions. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our readers about
Well,
reopening?
yeah, I think as I was thinking about this interview, what we're engaged in right now, very often with higher ed has their political implications. This really, I think, transcends politics. This is really about the future of some of the most important institutions in our society and how they get through arguably the biggest crisis since the founding of American universities. And many colleges and universities aren't going to make it. There's one estimate that 25% of the colleges and universities are going to go bankrupt this year. Um, no one knows what the fall is going to bring. No one's going to know how many people show up in the fall, how many people take a gap year, how many people, and so schools that are tuition dependent are on the precipice right now. And I don't know that the general public knows or understands how serious it is. And it's a time when this is, wearing a mask is not a political statement. It is how do you keep people healthy when they're all living together in close quarters? And so it's bigger than any agenda other than a commitment to some of the most important institutions we have in our society. And I think you're going to see that people are coming together around that, that these places are worth saving and that we should do what we can to try to make them, help them get through this.
Great. Well, thank you so much,
Yeah,
Professor Goldstein. I really appreciate your time.
it's
Uh,
a pleasure to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Thank you very much.